Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Hi everybody, we have a very special show tonight. I have two fine gentlemen to introduce tonight, and I'd love to say hello to everybody in the chat. Hey Patriot, I see you going by there. Glad you could come in. We've been thinking about you. Glenn, Chris, everybody that's out there. Let me get these guys on and let's just get this party started. So without further ado, Monday Madness could not be Monday Madness without my lovely buddy Steve Stockton. Hello, love.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
I'm doing great.
I like that intro, that what lies beyond the gate, F around and find out.
There
That's
you
what's
go.
about to happen here.
And we find out together. That's amazing. And we enjoy the journey, right? I mean, what are you going to do? You can go kicking and screaming, or you can go laughing and, whatever. It's your choice is yours. Help me say hello real quick to somebody's lovely chat. Creepy Unsolved, hello. How you doing, hon? Laura, how you doing?
Who's here? Glenn Dennison's here. Black Dragon, KC, Maraid the Mermaid.
Fantastic.
Who else? Blue Crossroads is here.
Yes,
Laura
hey,
Elizabeth.
Blue.
Uncommon Belief. Callie Snyder here all the way from Hawaii. Dude, I want your weather. It's 25 degrees.
My
snow
goodness. Hey,
and ice
Uncommon.
here.
Thanks to all the mods and everybody in here tonight. Now tonight, Steve, this wasn't my idea, nor was it yours. If I
ain't taking the blame for it.
I think all the blame needs to go on the gentleman we're about to introduce here tonight.
That's got my vote.
You know him. The chat knows him and loves him. He's a gatekeeper. Come on in here, Donny Cho. Hey, hun, how you doing? Welcome in. This is going to be so much fun. This is fantastic. When you do a YouTube show, this is what you do it for. You get listeners, get connections, make friendships, families, tribes, right? Welcome in, Donny. This was a great idea. This was all your idea.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to blame you anyway.
Basically, yeah, let's get together. You said you had questions and you had read the book that Steve and I wrote together. And you said, I got questions. And I thought, isn't that the neatest thing? I mean, when are two authors able to sit down with somebody who actually read it and have a conversation about it? Usually, the way it's usually done, authors will write a book. I mean, could take years by the time, something is finished product. I remember the one we just did with Laurel Canyon. What was his name? He passed. The man who wrote that book on weird scenes.
On the tip of my tongue.
I know, me too. But he was talking about how long it was taking to get the book out, and they were deciding pictures and chapters and the way they were set. And the way Steve and I did it, we just, the only people involved was he and I, and it to sit down with somebody who, it's one thing to read a review, Donny. It's another thing to be able to sit down and see, like, when I put that in there, did they get it, or was it too much, or were they able to see it? Did it match with something they went through? I mean, it's a real gift to have you on tonight and to be able to talk a little bit about it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I think second time on the show, but first time on video. So everyone.
Hey.
Good to put a face with the name.
Yeah.
Yes. It's awesome.
Yeah, I figured it was about time. The book was it was an interesting experience. I think for me though,
say that again.
The unique thing about the book for me was that I already knew you guys. So when I'm reading these stories that you wrote, I'm just
cool,
like, I know Cisco. I could ask her.
How cool.
Like all these extra questions that the other readers don't get a chance to ask because they don't know her like
That's
that.
what I'm saying. It's really surreal. It's like even preparing for tonight, I was just thinking, well, I don't have to do, this or read a book. I wrote the book and, I didn't even want to pick it up. I mean, I just now did right before we came back on because it's been a while since I've even opened it. I've told these stories so many times.
I probably should have had a refresher too, but I mean, my stories, I know them, I lived them. So
yeah.
And yours, I feel like I know them and lived them too because we spent so much time in that book.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just picking out the font. I mean, you guys have no idea. We could talk about margins for an hour and a half, just trying to get things lined up. I mean, the little things you don't think about. Everybody likes that romantic thing where, you sit down in the dark, you light a candle, whatever you do in front of your keyboard or you use a legal pad and handwrite it, whatever your process is. And everybody thinks that it's all that, but it's not. When you have to start loading that stuff up and picking font and that one doesn't fit and the cover won't fit and, everything else. I'd like to show, if it's cool with everybody, just show the cover. If anybody hasn't, we can talk through it. But
well, I have my copy
go ahead.
Here, and I would show the cover, but Toby totally tore into it. So I left it on the book.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is right there.
The dog ate his homework.
Right here. See that? You see this?
Yeah, I said, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We're at least we're part of his growing up, part of the teether. I never thought it'd be a good teether.
I've heard of people devouring a book before, so there you go.
That's so funny. But there it is right there. And it's the cover. I can take no credit for this. But once we got it all together, I went and looked, and the third picture I looked at, I think, was this one. And that is something to be said, because if you had any idea how many covers are out there, graphic designers do this for a living. They just put out a bunch of horror covers and a bunch of romance covers and a bunch of action covers, and you just pick. And I can't even remember what I put in to have it come out. But the weird thing was, it's got both my cats. It's got my raven. I have a raven that comes in the backyard. His name's Harry. It's got him in it. And it's got this gate. And if you look beyond her, you see the people. And that's the most important thing about this whole book before we even get started. It's understanding I didn't go looking for them. They found me.
And that looks like you standing in the gate even. It's even got red hair.
Isn't that something? That was the only thing I had the artist change. I said, can you make her hair red? And he said, yeah. And this was probably the best day ever when I got my first shipment in. I ordered, and I gave them all away. I had them 10 minutes. I gave them all away. But it was cool. Just that much is cool, just thinking about it. But actually sitting down and writing, first you have to remember the experience. And then you have to almost dissect it and tell it again so somebody else will see it. And I think that was one of the most important things, other than getting it all together and the mechanics of it, was putting it out so other people can see it and feel it and maybe match it to their thing. You know what I mean, Steve?
Yeah, that was the whole thing. That a lot of the stories you would tell your story, and then I'd come along behind you and tell an anecdotal story. A lot of our experiences were the same, just different locations, different times, and things are similar in a way. And it was cool the way it came out. And she didn't even see my part of the book until everything was finished. I had all her chapters, and literally as soon as she'd send me a finished chapter, I'd put my thoughts down and then set that aside. And then she saw it when it was all done, and just it blew her away. And I'm like, anything you need me to change, take out, delete, we'll do it. And she liked it just like it was. So I was scared.
Oh, yes. That was one of my questions, actually, because I was wondering, because the way the book was set up, Cisco, you would tell your story, and then at the end of that chapter, Steve would add his either your story or your insights or your analysis. So I was just wondering how that worked out for you guys. Like if you were exchanging, communicating the whole time, or
no, absolutely not. In fact, a lot of times I had to try to rein myself in because I didn't want to overshadow Cisco's wonderful stories because she's got some
So
amazing
sweet.
experiences there. But no, she'd send me the chapter. I'd read it, and then basically whatever came out of my head first was what went onto the page. Other than just typos and things, it wasn't edited.
Now, Steve, had you heard all the stories before you received them, or?
Not all of them. I'd heard her tell some of them, like on Where'd the Road Go, and
Yep.
then just through some of our marathon phone conversations, I'd heard bits and pieces. But that was the first time hearing all those stories in their entirety.
It's a
So,
trip too when you go to sit down and write it. It's so different than just telling it off the top of your head. You know, of course you're just recounting something that happened, so you're going to remember it in steps. But sometimes, depending on the radio show you're on, the people you're on with, if you're on a large panel, a short panel, if it's just you have to edit it down and still get the same feel while telling the story, and that's hard. But when you're writing the book, you really try to get the insight of, this is how I saw it. This is how I saw it when I was 10, but maybe this is how I saw it when I was 25 as well, and go back and revisit it and go back, because it changes, Donnie. It really does. Sometimes it's like, I thought it was this, but it was bigger. It was this,
yeah.
this, and this. It's spider webbed, you know. And I think, one of the greatest teachers in that, if not the spirits and the ghosts themselves, it was Steve. Because Steve and I would have these, like he just said, marathon conversations, and he'd pick through it the whole time listening to every word, and he'd come back and I'd say, what do you think? And he'd have a whole different, maybe not different, but a vantage point that had what I said, but added more to it, or had another look at a different way. It's really neat, and I think a lot of the radio shows and talking to people like you has done that too. It adds on to it, but it never really did a 180. It just kind of grew, if that made a lot of any sense.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed too, that sometimes, I mean, it may be years later, I'll remember some little detail that just kind of pops into my head, like, oh yeah, not anything that really changes
Right.
the story, but just some little tiny piece of information or something that lost in the midst of time. I don't have anywhere near total recall, but that's always fun. It's like finding Easter eggs that you've left for yourself.
And it's different when
Years
you're
later.
writing. It's different when you're writing and you're quiet, and you do have almost that thing going on. Like, I know, to me, it made a difference where I was writing. I had to change my atmosphere and stuff to try to go back and remember that. Some of those things, remembering, I don't want to say they were traumatic, but they definitely conjured feelings that you didn't want to go through again. In some cases,
I'm sure there were in some of those stories. I'm sure.
And some of it is just, it's hard to capture what you were feeling then too. That's why I don't think I'll ever write out my Black Eyed Kids experience.
Be
It's
hard.
better for me to tell it. I don't think I could ever get my writing to the point that I could convey the fear and the feeling and stuff that I personally experienced. And even telling it kind of falls flat, but at least you can hear the fear in my voice. I get nervous when I tell it. My hands sweat and I
Yeah.
stammer and things.
Yeah, you can hear it.
I don't think I could ever get that into words to effectively.
That's the
Make it
hardest thing,
strong
Steve,
enough.
to put those words down and get it like, I forget the name of the chapter, but it was the one, the possum and the snot hag.
Yeah.
To get that whole thing down, so much happened during that chapter, that experience. That was one where, of course, I really saw, as far as my mom being the warrior I knew she was, and mom's takeover and, at a crisis or whatever, chaos, and fix the problem. But I also saw compassion in her and emotion that just kind of, nothing in the world could break her, but, having to chase down this possum. So, I saw that too. And that kind of emotion, there was a lot of that going on. And because it was very profound, but it was almost like it was slowed down. I don't know if that's a memory thing or I'm just so used to remembering it like that, or it was actually happening at the time, but you're just taking it all in because she's screaming, don't let it bite you, get under the chair, do this, all these different machine gunning orders at me in a chaotic pace. And you don't really know what to do. You're just kind of frozen and trying to take it all in. And at the same time, I'm trying to save the possum. I've never stopped doing that. I started that at a young age, and I'm standing by the door like, go this way, just trying to get it out of the house. But then eventually, when it finally, she had to kill it, we buried it outside. I wanted to put in the fact that I don't know what caused whatever that was, we call her the snot hag, to notice me. Was she someone homeless or just living out there in the woods, and I was in her area, and she was just an unfortunate human, because obviously she was disheveled and as well as hideous.
Maybe she wanted the possum. Like, hey, you gonna eat that?
Right. Maybe she was mad that we had killed the possum somehow. She knew.
We even talked about that one time.
Right.
That maybe she was some sort of witchcraft practitioner, and that was her familiar, and you just killed it.
Oh, wow, right?
Who knows? I mean, there's so many different ways you can go with that.
Yeah. Was she even human? Was she an elemental? Was she this or that? At the time that it was happening to me, I had no idea. But coming back in the house and the whole chase and the running and everything that happened, her getting closer to me and me noticing that she was obviously sick because she's got this unreasonable amount, that's the best way to put it, of snot hanging out of her nose, which was disgusting. But, at first I thought, she's sick? Or, that's when the hissing and stuff started. So it was just like, okay, I don't care anymore. I'm out of here.
I remember, so before I ask you some real nitty-gritty questions about some of the stories, do we have to worry about spoilers for the people in the chat?
Maybe if we can announce a spoiler. I didn't even think about it. We can say spoiler alert. We can't say the word bacon because that means we have another guest. So, just spoiler alert, I guess. Now, there's a lot of people in here that have read it, but again, maybe if we're just careful and maybe choose our words carefully, we could be mysterious around those parts or something. Because even if you're reading it and hearing it, it's two different things anyway. I don't think it would spoil reading the experience of reading the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think we're good, right, Steve?
Yep. But thanks for checking, Donny.
That's awesome. Cool that you thought of that, though.
Some of these stories were pretty crazy. Actually.
Yeah.
There were a couple.
Yeah.
There were a couple holy crap moments. Put the book down. Whoa, really?
Yep. Best review ever. Some of these stories are pretty crazy. Damn Skippy.
So, with regards to the snot hag, you were writing about how she was doing this weird thing with her hands. Could you, show me what she was doing? Yes.
So it was kind of... At first, I can't show you because I can't stand up, but at first her hands were just splayed down at her sides, out like this, like she was feeling her atmosphere as she was pushing off of it somehow. It was weird. But she was just doing this, wait a minute, let me get my other hand in here, where she just like this, real slow, like this. Like she was almost pulsating at me.
And her hands were out in front of her doing
that? Yeah. Out to her sides, out in front of her. Woo! Oh, it was so creepy. It was so creepy. It is so creepy. Because she was doing that, yeah. And I never heard her walk. I never heard her feet on the, because it was a crunchy ground. It was leaves and sticks. It was woods in autumn, So I never heard it, and she would propel. I'd look down and I'd look back up, and she'd be like an abnormally closer to me. I mean, it would be like she's real far away, and then all of a sudden she's there. Ooh! Yeah.
And she looked really disheveled. Do you remember how her clothes looked?
She had layered clothes, all dark. Several skirts, several what you would call maybe apron things tied around her, almost like old old think Jack the Ripper Whitechapel times where the old street maids and stuff like that would wear multiple layers like that, and she had a obviously a crocheted type shawl, but it was a shawl that had a lot of opening to it. It wasn't just holes. It was a stitch, like almost like a lattice work rather than a tight stitch. And there was all these leaves stuck in it and in her hair. And her hair was really long. And she had stuff stuck in it. And I really thought the first thought I remember really clearly was I thought she fell. And that's why she had all the leaves stuck on her. I remember thinking that, but, it's crazy. I know it's crazy.
So they were kind of like old-timey clothes. So she actually looked civilized. Because when I was picturing it in my head when I was reading it, I was envisioning like some Tarzan-looking lady just coming out.
No, not Tarzan, yeah. But like you said, but not civilized, really more. Like, I can't imagine her being in that time dressed like she was. It didn't look, it was out of place for sure. And it was definitely dark, but it wasn't like all blacks. It was like blacks and browns and grays and dirty and, and the snot hanging out of her nose, and it wasn't breaking, and it was swinging.
Yeah.
Like she'd move and it would swing.
That's
And it was just like, I'm going to gag thinking about it. It was just like, And she's getting closer, and she's angry, and you could feel it. You could feel the evil coming off of this woman.
The way you're talking about, she was dressed. My grandma used to dress like that. She'd
like
have
she
on
was
like
wearing
a
everything
slip
she owned.
and
Yeah.
a petticoat and a dress, and then an apron on top of that, and then maybe 2 sweaters. She got cold real easy. You go to her house in the summertime, she's got all the doors closed, the oven's cooking all the time, and she's got a sweater on.
Yeah.
And sometimes 2. If it were like a little chilly outside, she'd have 2 sweaters, maybe a hat or bonnet of some sort. But it was layers, just all these different layers of aprons and skirts and petticoats and slips. And so I think that was just
Like
the way
she
that people dressed back then. Just it was practical, but it was to keep you warm.
Yeah, and almost like she was wearing everything she owned. It was several skirts. I can remember looking at her, trying to figure out, like I said, if she fell. Because I would put my head down and lift it back up, and then she'd be moved, and she'd be behind the next tree, and I'd see her, and I could see that one hand doing this. It was just like it was pulsating, and then she did this kind of like bah thing. It was terrible. That's when I ran into the house, and that's when my mom is looking out the window, and I'm like, she's there. Oh, honey, there's nobody there. It's fine. You're just upset about the pasta. My mom didn't talk like that, but you get the idea. It's just your imagination. Calm down. It's okay. Everything was always okay. And she's looking out the window, doesn't see this woman. And I think the woman's gone, and I look out the window, and she's there. And that's when I'm realizing my mom can't see. I can see her. My mom can't see. And that's when I put that together, that I could see stuff that other people couldn't. And that wasn't the only time. Yeah, she knew. She knew I could see. Because the second time when I looked out the window, jumped on the chair, and I'm thinking, well, this time she really is gone, because my mom's just standing there. There's boxes all around. We were already getting ready to move. We were always moving. And I figured if she's gone, she's gone. I jump in the chair, I look out the window, and I'm looking right at where my mom is, and that's where this, snot hag is. And she sees that that's one of the first times I see that she knows, and I know that she knows kind of thing. It creeps you right out, because I think it's the recognizing of the whole thing. And then when she smiled, that was just it. It's horrible. Never went out that door again. I avoided, went out the front from then. And we were gone quite soon after that. I think it was within a very few weeks, or maybe even within a week we were gone. We already had boxes and stuff up. It's crazy.
But then when you moved, that was the best part of it, I think.
What did you say, Donnie?
I think she was just mad that nobody gave her a tissue.
I never offered her one. You're right. It was a whole test on that.
Maybe that whole thing was just sign language. Give me a Kleenex, little girl.
Yeah, give me a Kleenex. But oh my gosh, it was so. And I didn't know whether it's because I sang the church song that pissed her off. It felt like when I was doing that, that's when that outside evil presence, like that's when I got the first feeling of being watched, like there was somebody else there. That's, and I didn't know whether it was because I was singing the church song or just my singing irritated her, or gosh, there's 1,000 questions.
Or maybe she was mad to killed her pet possum.
Yeah. I mean, how did you like how that one ends though? Spoiler alert, guys. Plug your ears if you didn't read the book and you don't want to hear this part, but how did you like the ending on that one?
Oh,
my mom had passed, and I moved in with my aunt and uncle, who I knew lived in the same town, but I had no idea really because I was young. That we were so close, and I'm looking out the bedroom window. I'm looking out the bedroom window, and I see the bench in the back corner of that house, and I'm actually second floor up, looking down, and I could see. Oh my God! I'm on the other end of those woods where that daggum snot hag was. I was back. I mean, that, you want to talk about a feeling. Woo, man, that was something. Because it was like, that like you'd see in a movie. Yes, it really, really was. It really was. And, I can remember being in the backyard. Sometimes you'd think about it, sometimes you wouldn't. I was a teenager then, so I was busy, more. But, to be in the backyard and you look in those woods and you think about it. I never saw her again. I felt her, but, I never saw her again. And I remember playing Frisbee with my cousin, and he overshot it, man. I went to jump for it, missed, and it just glided, that beautiful Frisbee glide that, they used to do, and landed right in those woods. And I'm like, that Frisbee gone, man. I ain't going in there. That Frisbee is gone. Yeah, it was really that profound, Donny. It really was. Crazy, right?
Have you thought about going back there as like an adult? Being like, I'm older and stronger, so bring it.
No. There's things I will do stuff like that, but I think that one's personal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes
I don't know how else to put it.
Wait around on you. I had something that came out of a ditch and chased me when I was 8, and I went back to the same area when I was 15. It was kind of laughing like, I wonder what scared me when I was a kid. And darn it, whatever it was came out of the ditch and chased me again.
Yep.
I didn't run screaming and crying that time, but I didn't waste any time getting out of there. So it had waited, 7 years? It was still there, and it's probably still there. I never went back.
Oh, gosh. I mean, that's a good question. I'm sorry. I pulled a question from Laura. Cisco, do you think she was a forest spirit and mad at the animal died? Yes, I do think that's a possibility. I think all those things are possibilities because I don't know. All I could do is glean from that experience the things I found out. Like, I could see things my mom couldn't. And that makes me wonder, could she ever? Perhaps was she born with the same gift and she could see things that she had quieted down or didn't know how to handle because of the times and her era or her own, because that happens so much, because she never denied it, Donny. She never, oh, that's crazy. We don't talk about that. No, she was quite the opposite. It's just we didn't have a lot of time, She passed when I was 12 and she worked all the time, single mom in the 60s, So when we did get to talk about it, though, she was real cool about it. She was really, we never really got in depth at the farmhouse because, again, I think that was too emotional and maybe too close for her. There are a lot of damaging, really, really bad things happened in that farmhouse, so it was hard for some of my family to revisit that. But she would talk about other things around that, and it makes me think, did she have that and then shut it down somehow? But whatever, that day, I could see that snot hag, and my mom couldn't. And it made me question some things. It made me think deeper on the subject, if nothing else. Good question.
It seems like
this is fun.
when I was reading the first chapter about the farmhouse, I mean, to me, that felt like the most important story just because it kind of sets you off on this path. Do you feel like you were kind of chosen to experience all this stuff?
Wow, I think we're all chosen to
Yeah.
experience this stuff. I really, really do in a lot of ways. But it's like we think about it. I think it's bigger than what we think. I think, and again, I say I think because nobody's an expert, but we're chosen to go through certain things because it hones our character. We have choices. Our choices definitely put us in places. Like you hear people say all the time, "I had no choice." Yeah, you did. It might not have been neither one of them. There might have been shit in both hands. Pardon my French, chat. But you might have two shitty choices, but you still had a choice. Somebody made a choice. Somebody made a first move. You
And I've
know.
had people ask me that, why did you choose these things to write about? Like, they chose me to experience. I wasn't looking, especially in my younger years, I wasn't looking for any of that stuff. It sucked me out, or whatever how you want to say it, it found me. And yeah, I could have ignored it, just went along and pretended I didn't see things and didn't experience things, but it had just the opposite effect on me, made me curious. And once that curiosity was piqued and you start going down those rabbit holes, and this saw my
Yep.
first full body apparition at about 5 years old. I was just like, what was that? It didn't scare me, but it's just, I knew that little kids don't run across the road into the yard and disappear. And just that was when it took off. And that
Yep.
was,
He picked up a shovel to dig to see if the kid found a hole and he never
even
put the
tried
shovel down.
that. Yeah.
He'd been digging ever since, never put the shovel down. And that's what happened. Same thing happened with me. So were we chosen, maybe not chosen, like say born to be in that house to learn this or whatever, but I think we choose a path. We choose things that we're going to go through to strengthen whatever. This is just where I'm at
I
right
think
now.
it's offered to you. Like, here,
Yeah.
what you
You
make
know,
of this? Take this and look into it, or ignore it and turn away.
Right, because you got
That's
to
the
think too,
choice.
Steve. I'm in a house full of people who also chose.
Yeah.
See? So how can the universe take all those choices and make that work with the cards, not only the cards that we picked, but the cards that we were dealt to go with them. If
Yeah.
you want to look at it like a card game, and then we got to come down and play with the hand we've not only picked for ourselves,
Yeah,
but that we
it's
were
like
dealt.
playing blackjack.
Right.
There's a
And
few
then
people that's going to have 21, a few
yeah,
people that's going to bust, a few
yeah.
people that maybe need another hit before they believe.
Right,
So
right.
that's a
And
good analogy. Even if I
and
didn't.
everybody else has got their cards, and then the universe and the spirit guides and whatever. A lot of times people say, well, it's one or the other. No, I think it's all there. The spirit guides, angels, loved ones who have passed, elders, ancestors, things that were never human, just all these different things. And the universe has to take everybody's cards and make the game work and teach everybody the lessons. Okay, well, wait a
And again,
minute.
with blackjack, you still
Yeah.
got the dealer, and the dealer can cause things to happen.
Right.
Right.
And who's the dealer, right? So, yeah, I
Right,
do
if you want
think,
insurance.
and I also think that some things happen by happenstance, and however word you want to put on it, universe or whatever, whoever's got the wheel takes it and goes, okay, that could be a good lesson. Let's make it shift it this way. So you've got all these people in the house. You've got multiple teenage girls, multiple teenage girls all at the same time. Okay, at any given time there was at least 5 or 6 there, and me, I was the baby. Then you've got a very volatile, very large, very handsome man. He's a devil boy. But he looked like Robert Mitchum, if you guys know who Robert Mitchum is. And this is why he was married 7 times and I had no problem with the ladies. So that was my daddy. But he was also a World War II hero. And, at the very fact that he went and he got back somehow and did his duty in tours in North Africa and in Italy. So he also came back with what they called then shell shock. We call PTSD now. And he liked to drown that with alcohol. And unfortunately, the alcohol made him very violent and very volatile. And, Steve and I are talking one night, and he says, well, was your dad going into the house and that woke the house up? Or was the house that accentuated my dad? And I said, Steve, I think it's both.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think it's both.
Get
Plus, you've
your
got the
energy
energy
from
from the
him, and then he
teenagers.
was feeling the energy from that. The energy from the girls fed the house fed your dad. He fed back into the family. And just perfect storm there.
When I was reading that story, my immediate thought was, Cisco's dad had to have been getting influenced.
Yeah.
You don't have a haunting on that level and someone's not being influenced. You know? Like, I've watched enough episodes of Dead Files to know that
Yes.
when you're doing all that stuff, someone's getting influenced.
Right. Donnie, but it also hurts me to think, and I know that sounds fun. I don't mean really hurts me. I mean, I have to stop and think, because right now I'm probably the only one that ever sends him good energy, because I'm the only one that probably gets the fact that I picked him, and I probably looked at him knowing my spirit. If this is how I am on this side of it, I can't imagine what I'm like on the other side when I've got a couple of answers and I'm feeling really, really cheeky. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, you're going to be my dad and you're going to be a real asshole and you're going to do this, and this. And I'm going to watch all, the bad things you did and the effect that they had. And then I get to go behind and see the damage all the way down the ladder to each one of my siblings, each one of their mothers, because we were like the Brady Bunch, it was like his first wife's kids came with this one, and then they connected. They just kept getting bigger and bigger. And my mom was probably she was, one of the few that survived him, let's put it that way. I mean, this is bad. I'm talking very not really flippant, but again, it's been 50 years, so it's not that I'm jaded. It's just that if I can talk about this and somebody else is going through it and it helps, hey, it wasn't in vain. So that's why I say it like this. But, it really did. It affected every single person in that house, Donnie. So you're 100% correct saying that that's probably the most important story. And it had multiple layers. It really did.
I was thinking, if you didn't have that for anyone who didn't read it, Cisco's childhood home was haunted by the ghost of a very angry Revolutionary War soldier. I did try to go online and research red ribbons to see if it was the British side or the American side. But it turns out the Revolutionary War is like the worst war to research uniform and attire, because people back then kind of wore whatever they wanted.
This is true.
The rules were a little bit.
It's so true, but there was also, I can help you out with that a little bit. I'm no historian myself, but just, the little I do know is red ribbon was almost a surplus at that time. It was one of the things that were traded that just, just like nowadays you get so much of this or so much of that. It's like when the rubber band crap was so big and everybody started ordering and everybody started making these rubber bands. People were making bracelets, and before you know it, they're making suits out of them and stuff. But there's a warehouse full of cases of these rubber bands, because they just made so many, and then all of a sudden they misjudged the interest, and now they've got this surplus of rubber bands. Well, the same thing happened with red satin ribbon. I was coming off the ships at that time. So, of course, they handed out to soldiers, not only for hair or for adornment and stuff like that, but they tied a lot of letters with it. And in fact, during the Civil War, not the Revolutionary, but by the time it was still a surplus in the Civil War, believe it or not, that's where red tape comes from, because it was so much of it. That's what they would tie the soldiers' documents with. They weren't even in any alphabetical order. You were just in with whatever company you were in. And they said, but we got to go through all the red tape. So I'm thinking, and I've thought the same thing you did, is like, where would the red ribbon come from? And I think it was just one of those things, probably given to him by a sweetheart or a wife, to, remember me. That was big then. Buttons, handkerchiefs, pictures, of course, locks of hair. All those things were given. So it's probably that. But as you read at the end of the story, there is a great possibility that there were letters in a room, also a spoiler alert, that I heard about some 25 years later. And that person was asked to burn that stuff on the bonfire from all the junk of building that pantry. You remember that part? Yeah. So, and they were tied with a red ribbon. I'm like, what? What? You know, and this is my brother, who I probably never really even got to talk to him because he was on the second, third rung of the ladder of all us kids. And I can remember by the time, you know, right after, you know, we started hearing all the screaming and the guy being in my sister's room, he was like getting married and out of there by, you know, not long after. So it was crazy. Like I said, the family moved all over. It's, you know, it's hard to pin people down. And they're still scared to talk about it. The ones who are alive today still won't talk about it. The ones who would are dead.
One of the things I kept thinking during after I read the book was that because of the red ribbon guy, I feel like if there was no red ribbon ghost, maybe your family didn't leave the house. Maybe you spent your formative years with your mom and dad, which means you wouldn't have had the snot hack experience. You wouldn't have any of those experiences. So I felt like, man, that one ghost, that one red ribbon ghost, really like affected her life, like totally. Right? Your life
I didn't even think about it like that.
I didn't think about it that way either, but it did. That's where it all started, because none of the other experiences, the thing crawling across the road, any of those stories really would have happened, I don't think, the way they happened or where they happened without the beginning, which was there in the farmhouse.
Yeah, I couldn't help but
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. It's true. Very true.
Maybe if it wasn't for the red ribbon ghost, your dad would have been a nice guy. I don't know.
Well, there were some problems. There was definitely a push on that one because, Steve put it best when he said that, you know, when my dad got there, you know, that could have very well, you know, his anger, you know, the negative entities feed on, you know, negative vibrations, you know, like fear and anger and all that stuff. He had a lot of cracks in his windshield. It was easy to push on that. What I feel bad about is the times that we used to see him arguing with things and talking to things that weren't there. Maybe they were there. Maybe he had, maybe I didn't get the gift from my mom. Maybe I got it from my dad.
Yeah.
Well, he just didn't know how to handle it. I mean, that's speculation, total speculation, just spitballing here, but it's possible. You know,
plus, I feel like if I was the ghost of a Revolutionary War soldier, like if I feel like your dad would have been the perfect target because he was also he had things in common, right? He also went to war. He was a drinker, and you know, people back in the 1700s in America, they loved alcohol, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they'd just be drinking all that cider and ale all day.
Yeah, my dad was pure Scotch, man. My dad was Scotch. He was, you know.
I think whatever was in the house wanted him to find those papers, wanted him to read that, just maybe from one soldier to another. And then when your dad got pissed and made him burn it, then that just set the ghost off.
Set the whole spiel. Yeah. And whatever was in the garage was so evil, I wouldn't go there because if you remember, I told the story. I had this little green, I don't know what we called them, just pedal cars, right, Steve? Yeah. The little, you get in it, had the body of a car, and you just got in and pedaled it and had a little steering wheel. And I had this car, and I used to ride it all up and down the driveway, whatever, but I was supposed to put it in the garage. I knew I was supposed to put it in the garage. I knew I'd get in trouble and probably not be able to ride it if I didn't put it back, you know. With all that many kids, there had to be some kind of order in the chaos, you know. So it wasn't that I'd get beat or anything, but it was just you didn't want to get in trouble. And I would opt to get in trouble than to go into that garage because it was such an evil presence there. And it was something totally different than the Revolutionary War guy. You know, you would think he was horrible because I'm sitting there and this head comes flying at me and I watch it go through the wall and it's screaming. It's got these red eyes. And that's where I thought red eyes, red ribbon, because I was a little kid the first time I saw him, you know, and then through the years I saw him more. But, you know, that's where I learned too. He's angry. I was scared, but I wasn't the kind of scared you'd think I would be. The most overwhelming feeling I got from him was sadness, and he was scared. I don't know how to explain it. That's crazy to be able to remember that. I felt sorry for this guy, you know, and I couldn't understand why anybody couldn't help him, but we weren't allowed to talk about it. So. And
another connection that I just realized, Cisco, you also have red hair.
Yep.
Maybe that was him. Maybe that was him leaving his mark. Yeah. Maybe if there was no red ribbon ghost, Cisco would have been a brunette.
Who knows? Who
I don't
knows?
know.
I don't know. The milkman was a redhead, though. I don't know. No, I would. No, it's not
Probably.
fair to my mama. No, but no, I'm my daddy's girl. That's for sure. I got his cleft chin. He left his mark on me, and we all have this strawberry birthmark. I just learned this. Isn't this weird that you just learn 50 years later all these secrets of the family? But, they only get drunk and say so much, and then they pass out or leave, So there's, you got to get little snippets along the way. I'm sorry if any of my family's listening, but it's true. So my brother tells me a couple of reunions back that my dad's kids have this strawberry birthmark on the back of our neck. And now I'm going around looking at everybody to see. I'm serious. Found a couple too. Isn't that crazy? We've got one of those families.
Yeah, I feel like I could spend an entire, the entire time just talking about questions for about one chapter.
That's fascinating that somebody would think to have questions. I think it's great. Hit us with another one, right, Steve? This is fun.
Yeah,
it was just, it was. You know what? Okay, I had a kind of a silly theory, right? I guess my little fan theory was that maybe the Red Ribbon intentionally, broke up your family and set you on that path to, have all those other paranormal encounters, because his goal was to get you to help those Civil War soldiers pass.
It could very well be. They do work that way. Steve and I know they.
Plan.
Yeah, it's a long game, but you know what? They got all the time in the world. We've had people come and get us in dreams. We've had people come and get us across the miles from places we don't even know where they came from, right, Steve? To come and get us to help somebody else. And you wonder why they would go through so much.
That started appearing to me in dreams. Look at all that went through that and all the other people that were involved that had no clue what any of that was about.
Maybe when the, because there was definitely by the end of the book, it definitely felt like it came full circle.
That's so cool. Yes, that's so cool.
It starts with a historical soldier, and it ends with historical soldiers.
Absolutely.
So I was like, in a weird roundabout way.
I'm so glad you picked that up.
Help those other historical soldiers.
So true. And that's what I say to Steve, because, like his granny said, sometimes you're supposed to see things. They're just for you. You're supposed to see, because they are like mile markers, or they're like, it's almost like the life is like a pinball game. You're the ball, and, you can bounce off of others, or you can bounce up and use that momentum to drive yourself higher. You can get hit with a flipper and get knocked right out of the game. You can, wind up in a hole. Who knows? You can, hit tilt and just, full tilt boogie and, be a millionaire, whatever it is that you're playing. But the thing is you do that with people. You bounce off of other people, and that doesn't stop when you're dead. They do the same things. The way things manipulate, like I said, put it out into the universe and see what happens. Whether you're talking about the cards you picked yourself, or that you were dealt, or the mixture of, or just, a conversation, I write a book, Steve writes a book that somebody reads, and that sparks their interest in, starting to learn how to meditate, or do tarot, or something else, or, help other people, or exercise their gifts, and then they go on to help 1,000 other people.
And that's such a good feeling to have had people come to me, particularly with Strange Things in the Wood, and say, I read your book and it inspired me to write down my family's stories, and stories that I heard growing up that nobody will remember if I don't put them to paper. And that was exactly the reason that I had behind my first book. That impetus was, otherwise these stories die with me because nobody else either heard them or is repeating them.
Yeah, that's something else. I was just reading a couple of things in the chat. There's so much wisdom in this chat all the time. And Jackie, I'm so glad to see you back, kiddo. There's been a couple people in here we hadn't seen in a while. Melissa and Casey, how y'all doing? And if I missed anybody, I don't mean it. I'm just really listening to everything they're saying too, because I'm thinking about things that have gone all my life, and I'm trying to look at them in a different way too, because we never learn by sitting and going, no, this happened, it was this way, and I don't want to hear any other ways. because we don't learn that way. And that goes with all of this, whether it's metaphysical, supernatural, paranormal, spiritual, you name it, because that's what this journey is all about. It's like things we were talking about last night too. That whole gauntlet that Steve went through brought him full circle. And my story, like Donny just said, happened full circle. I have always been trying to help the soldier and leave no man behind. I've always had that. My dad was, like I said, he was a soldier, and I guess I was always trying to grow up and be something he would been proud of. We all kind of do that, about our parents, I guess, even subconsciously. My sister was Navy. She fought during Vietnam and all that. She was a photographer. She went through several tours. And I think there's been 4 times maybe I've had somewhat of a past life regression, if you want to call it that, either through meditation or just readings and spirit guide readings and things. And I'm always a soldier. So I'm wondering this time if maybe I had to do something. I feel like I was a leader of some kind, and maybe I led some people in a wrong decision or wrong choice, and maybe in this life I'm trying to save as many as I can. It could be something as simple and some very profound as that, or it could just be chance. And that's the things we pick up, like you said, Donny, at a young age. This soldier, and I'm still trying to help as many soldiers as I can, both living and dead. And Steve is the same way. That one thing sparked him off on a lifetime of searching and helping. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Oh, speaking of full circle, actually, I wanted to ask Steve about something that you wrote in one of the sections in the book. It was in the Ouija board chapter. A couple nights ago on 13 past midnight, I asked you to tell the Ouija board story. Do you remember that?
Cool.
Because it was like a Christmas miracle. For those who don't know, like
it really
Dave,
was.
Your mom,
it really was like a Christmas miracle. We always think miracles are just like little things that really help, that might help save a life or something like that. But the little ones are miracles too, aren't they, Donny? Just like you said, didn't you ask the Ouija board for a Christmas album that you wanted, wasn't it?
Yeah, I asked
because it was like around
around Christmas time. I asked it about the weather, if we were going to have snow. Even though there was just a small chance, it told me, yes, there will be snow. And then it did snow. And then there was a Christmas album that I'd heard at kindergarten that I absolutely coveted. And it was probably from the 50s or early 60s. This would have been in like 1968. And couldn't find it anywhere that I normally bought records. I was just a little collector when I was a kid. I had a big stack of Christmas hour, any kind of albums, really. But I particularly loved Christmas music. And I had to have this record, and I asked the Ouija board about it, and it gave us the name of a record store on Market Square in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. And I'd never heard of it. Of course, I was only 5. My mom didn't know of it. She had to look it up in the phone book. So it came from somewhere. I mean, a shared conscious, supernatural, who knows. Called the guy. He took the information, said he'd call us back, and I was disappointed. I'm like, nah, he's not going to have it. But yeah, within a half hour, he called, said he had it, and he would hold it for us. And within a week or so, we'd gone down, taken a drive all the way from Oak Ridge to downtown Knoxville, just so I could have that record. And I remember sitting in the car, sitting in the back seat, holding it on my lap, just clutching it on my way home. And excuse me.
So
that's kind of a scary thing, though. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Donny.
I noticed in that section, like you tell that story, but then in the next paragraph, you're like, but Ouija boards, everyone knows, are evil and bad. So I was like, what happened between that story and that story? Because that was like the happiest, most positive Ouija board story ever. The next paragraph, he's like, boards are evil.
That's one of those things that you learn as you go along. That
yep, you certainly do.
It can draw you in. It can get you dependent on it. People do that with astrology. People do that with tarot cards and things. Anything like that, if you're consulting it, it's one thing, but it gets to a point where it almost controls you and it becomes an obsession. Yeah. And same with the Ouija board. Now, my mom, her family came out of the spiritualism movement around the turn of the last century. They used Ouija boards. They held seances. They did table tapping. My grandmother told fortunes, I don't know how many different ways, coffee grounds, tea leaves, uh, all this stuff. But then later on, they got out of all that, and you couldn't have paid my grandmother or my mother to touch a Ouija board later in their lives. They learned that it was just not something to be toyed with.
So it wasn't like one major, like, catastrophic event that made you completely just do a 180 on Ouija boards.
I think it's over time we've learned to respect
it. You hear so many others, it's like a weapon or anything like that. It can be a tool, it can be a good thing, or it can be used for harm. A lot of it's on the intent of the person, but if you let it get to you to the point where it's setting your intent instead of you setting your intent, then that's when it gets dangerous. And there's, as with any tool or weapon or anything, there's a proper way to use it and certain ways that you don't want to use it. And I think that's learning respect for it.
And it depends on the person too.
I don't have any particular aversion to them right now, but it wouldn't be my first go-to if I were looking for answers.
No, it's real easy, and I can tell you something a lot of mediums have told me. There's not a lot of higher vibrational beings walking around for teenagers to pull a board out and light a couple candles. They're usually lower vibrational beings.
You know what I always say, it's like a chat room in AOL, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're most likely going to get some creepy asshole in the chat room because people are actually balanced.
And I've had that happen.
It is kind of like that.
Stuff get on a Ouija board and that would not get off and let anything through. It was stronger than whatever you were trying to talk to, and it just refused.
Yep, it's all about energy.
People that have broken burn boards because they couldn't get rid of one particular spirit that seemed to have come through, and just like, hey, I like it here. I'm not going anywhere.
It's like it's wearing a path. Like I said 1,000 times, through the woods, enough people walk through it back and forth. The path is well worn, and that's what they're doing each time they're, answering a question or whatever. And you're also giving it permission to go through you and use you to move your hands. Yeah. That's another thing on top of it. So, and if you don't close that and you don't shut it down properly as well as open it properly, you can leave stuff open for the next person that walks through that does have a lot.
Put it in the box and put it away. Pushing the thing to get by, that doesn't do it. There's a lot more.
And it leaves it open for other people to have cracks in their protective field as well. There's a lot of unseen stuff that goes on. Like, Donny, in the chapter, it's called Friends Don't Let Friends Ouija. And I described the first time I pull out the Ouija board and my friend, and I knew about it. I knew enough to be cautious because I had been studying things and I'd been picking stuff up, reading a lot of occult books and things like that. And I wanted to try it. I thought I was strong enough to do so. And of course, in the back of my mind, I was hoping that my mom would come through and tell me she was okay. It's always a secret thing when you're sitting there. I would never tell that in front of friends, even my neighbor. But I was kind of letting her tell me what she knew about it, see if there was any more, and I was kind of laying back. And when I touched that thing, it did a little back and forth, where I'm watching, is she moving this? Am I moving that? I mean, to the point I'm watching the muscles in her arm to see if she's moving. I mean, for a 10-year-old, I'm telling you, I read a lot of books. I paid attention. I was learning body language and stuff at that time, too. It's crazy, but it's true. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, I'm not moving it. And she's not moving it. And as I'm thinking that, the thing shoots. And I mean, it caught air. It slid across the board, slid completely off the board, onto the table, off the table, caught air. And we're right by the pool. We're sitting outside by the pool, shallow end. It goes so far, it goes past the rope that marks where there used to be an old blue and white rope with the little bobbers. It flew on the other side of that. And I promise you, chat, my hand to God, it was like an unseen hand took that planchette and shoved it down into the water. You could see the force of the water coming up off of this planchette as it was shoved down, and then it let go and just glided to the bottom.
I've seen stuff like that. I saw one fly off the board one time,
do not
hit
touch
the wall, and actually went a couple feet up the wall and then fell down. It's like, okay, it's time to get rid of this thing.
Do not touch.
I've got my own Ouija board stories, and Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't know. The first thing that anybody would do, and I slap backs of hands for doing this, but the most obvious thing, if you ask me what caused that, I would have to say my mother, who was,
Yeah, it could
3,
have been
4
her
months.
spirit came and
That
slapped that
slapped
planchette
that
off the
thing, said,
board.
"You're not touching this," because I
Yeah,
was so vulnerable. I could
yeah,
see that now. I can look back and see she would see I was so vulnerable, and I could have gone down a dark and heavy road
yeah.
right then.
And that's what happens. I knew
And
some girls
oh,
that fooled
bad.
around with one in middle school, and they were the type of girls, the emo kids that kept to themselves and cut themselves and had black hair, all those sort of things, kind of the goth kids. And one of them got so obsessed with it that when her mother finally got wise and took it away from her, broke it and burned it, the girl had like a nervous breakdown and had to go into
Wow.
like a 72-hour psych
Attached.
unit. And you
Yeah.
get an attachment to
I
things like that, whether that's all in your
You get
head
addicted.
or something
Yeah.
supernatural.
yeah.
It's still real to the person
I
using
could
it.
see me going down that road at that time in my life too.
Yeah, and
I just
also,
lost my mother. I was an orphan. I was bad.
I've heard of
I was
people go
starting to
down
get
that road like
mad.
that.
I was starting to
um,
get mad and angry. I was starting to get to be one of those really smart teenagers with a little
yeah,
behind me. I could have been
I was going
dangerous.
to say some older girls I knew
Yeah.
took one and decided they were going to use it to conjure a demon to send to another girl that they knew. Well, they ended up conjuring 13 demons, and every single person that was at that Ouijaing or whatever you want to call it had something
Yep.
happen to them.
Hmm.
Car wrecks, a house caught on
All
fire,
kinds of stuff.
somebody's father died. All this stuff happened, and they like had actually summoned something forth and turned it loose. And you can't always get the genie back in the bottle. They had to go
Sure.
and seek out some kind of practitioner and things like that to
Hmm.
clean up the mess and
That's what happens,
undo what
man.
they done because they had no clue. You can
Everybody
open a
says
door
this.
that you can't shut.
Everybody says this stuff, and Steve and I say it all the time, and I'm going to say it here on the show again tonight. I look and I pick up things people say and everything else. Listen, we've dealt with a lot of people. I get many calls, weird times of the night,
Yep.
all over the time. I need somebody so bad. Well, what were you doing? Well, this is going on. This is going on. You can say, okay, I can kind of see that. Okay, and we did this, and I'm like, okay, here we go,
And if they
because
didn't do something, what
and
did you bring into
again,
your home? Have you
right.
bought any antiques? Have you got anything from another
It's not the
country or something
board,
like
man. You could
it? Could
write it
be
on the
any different
floor with a
things. Yeah.
glass. It's
Oh,
not the board.
I used a Ouija
Although,
one time. We wrote the
wood.
letters on a piece of paper
Yep.
and used a squashed beer can as a
Right.
planchette. It worked just as well as a board, a real one.
But I'll tell you, sweetie, I mean, I've gone into dark basements that I can tell you 100% that big Marines were coming out of fast. I mean, that's a fact,
Yep.
And I've gone down into these cellars to help. Well, most of them were Civil War soldiers. I figured 150 years was enough. Let's get this done, And
Yeah.
I'm focused. But I've never touched another Ouija board since being beside that pool. I knew that something bigger than me, that knew more than me, did not want me near it. I really felt it was me. I could very easily say maybe it was her spirit guide doing it to keep her from using it. Why would it be me? But I felt it was. Maybe it was both of us, because often spirit does that. Things that spirit do, it doesn't necessarily have to be just one person. It helps or affects, and we have to stand back and look at that and think of it that way too. It's very
Yeah.
simple to say my mother didn't want me to use the Ouija board because she knew in my frame of mind it would have probably taken me down a very dark road.
Yeah.
But
just
I
like
took
we were
another
saying
path.
that things can happen, things that are meant for you. You may be with somebody when they're experiencing something that was meant for them, but you see it too. You don't know
Yeah.
what that person's got going
Right.
on, and they may observe it. They may not tell you, oh, well, I know what that means, or I know where that came from. So you can't always tell when it's multiple people experience something who that it's meant for, or it might not be meant for either one of you. Like my friend and that I think we encountered some sort of skinwalker or something like that. I think it was sent for his dad, who was full Cherokee, because when we started describing and stuff, he was the one that got very quiet and made us promise not to go back down there where we saw the thing.
Yeah. That was a profound experience for you
And
too,
then
Steve.
even pulled
That was
the
like my
shed
snot hag for Steve.
down into a shell pit and burned it a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
But
He didn't
he
do
went
that
down
for no
there.
reason.
Right, right. And
That was a big deal.
so
Yeah.
there's things like that that I think that was he knew what it was and what to do about it. He did what he had to do.
Yeah.
But me and his son were the ones that encountered it.
So in a nutshell, it's not the board. It's what it's like going to a payphone back in the day when we used to have payphones and the phone rings and you walk by and you pick it up. You have no idea who that is. And why do you think spirit
That's
is
a good
telling you the
analogy.
truth? The spirit's telling you the truth when I know half the living people I know lie to my face.
Because
So
haven't you ever done that when you were a kid?
you got
A
to think
payphone
about it.
was
It's more
ringing.
feeling and
You walk by, you pick it up,
It's
and you
creepy,
just start
though, isn't it?
bullshitting
Who
whoever's
is
on
this?
the other end. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some of
actually-
my best conversations with wrong numbers back in the day.
One time I walked past a public phone and it was ringing, and I picked it up, and I was like, "Hello," and it was my dad.
Whoa!
What's the chances of that? I've heard
That's
about
a
stuff
trip.
like that happening where
Yeah,
somebody was
And I was
trying to
like-
get
'cause
somebody,
I
dialed the
recognized
wrong
I was like,
number,
"Dad?" And he was
and
like,
it rang
"Donny?"
as they were walking by.
Yeah.
that's a trip, man. All kinds of stuff like that.
Now-
They just
Now,
tickles
to be
me,
fair,
man.
it wasn't a public payphone. It was like we were in this mega church, and there was this like one public phone for within the church
Right.
thing. But it was like a 2,000 person church, and it was on the wall.
Yeah,
and it was just ringing,
still
and
the
I was like,
chances. That's a trip,
where's
man.
the odds?
Yes, everybody, thanks, Mod, for saying hit the like. It does help us on YouTube, and you guys have been fantastic. I appreciate you getting me. I think we're like 140 subscribers. So thanks. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you. But go
I have
ahead.
a-
You got another
I have a
question? Go
pretty-
ahead.
I have a pretty bad Ouija board story, but I'm not going to share that today because I just figured today I want to focus more on the book and less
Sure,
on...
we'll have you back on, man. This is fun.
Yeah, I'll share that later on. But
Sure.
okay, yeah, I still got so many more questions. All right,
Go ahead,
the
sweetie.
story with your great grandma. Mm-hmm. That was
Flora
was
May.
Was that before the Snot Hag or after the Snot Hag?
It's kind of before.
Because I get
That was
I was just kinda
before.
wondering, like, what the timeline was
But
like.
not very much before. I think that was when my grandmother was during the first part of my kindergarten, so I was between 6 and 7. The Snot Hag was more like 9, 8, 9. So a couple years before.
And
But I had no
actually heard
idea. I had no idea. I thought she
you
was
had
my
no
grand.
idea.
None, absolutely none. We just didn't talk again. My mom, and it wasn't. It was hard for timelines, It's like I know my grandfather died, and I remember going to the hospital to see him, and the most profound thing in that was everybody was saying it's hit his brain, it's in it, the cancer's gone to his brain. There is no saving him. He's going crazy. He's talking to people that aren't there. And I remember trying to get my aunt's attention and say, but they are there. You see what I'm saying? Nobody would listen to me. And I felt so bad that they were calling my grandpa crazy, and he wasn't crazy. They were there, and he was in the war, and it was like a Hawaiian dancer and stuff like that. And I'm like, go ahead, Grandpa, It's like, but everybody was saying he was crazy. And I was so mad about that because how dare you call them crazy? They are there, but nobody would listen because I was a little kid. Shut up, Here's some change for the vending machine.
So you were interacting with your Lenape great-grandmother in the cellar of that house. Mm-hmm. Did you ever recall seeing her in any other room?
Upstairs back bedroom. That's why for me it was nothing to know. Like I'd get off the bus, I'd go running down the sidewalk in the front door. The big Zenith TV would be there, and it would be playing soap operas, whatever. Because there's times that it comes on and goes. So it would always be pretty much the same one. And either my grandmother would be sitting in the chair watching soap operas, she'd have a sandwich made for me, snack, whatever, or she'd be in the kitchen. She would never be in the cellar. And I would always want to go in the cellar because that's where the apples and sometimes pears and things like that were kept, the good stuff in the root cellar. Yep. And sometimes my grandpa would be down there if it was his day off. He worked for Bendix. He was a machinist. He also had a big a lot of tools and work thing off to one side. The root cellar was to the right, and the sewing room that my great grandmother was in, there was a little curtain you could pull back that was really the doorway, and then it was this back big old sewing room back there. It was a great cellar, and it was cool. So in the beginning of school, it's still hot outside in Jersey.
Yeah.
And you still have your, your Indian summer, I guess. You have the 2-3 weeks that's really hot. And, I'd still go down there because it was nice and cool. And I could hear her sewing in there. And I'd pull back that curtain. There she'd be. And sometimes she'd be upstairs in the back bedroom, but never like at the dinner table or anything like that. But I don't remember eating dinner much there. So maybe my mom came and picked me up, and then we ate dinner at home. I'm not 100% sure.
Long, right?
No, I think it was probably more like, I can remember living there. It was all mishmashed because, like I said, my mom was a single mom in the, this has got to be 68, 69. So single mothers back then didn't have it easy, and they had to do it in heels. Yeah. So she was an advertiser. So she would go from one place, and then a better job, better opportunity, better place to live. We'd move there. Something would happen. Bam, we go to the next thing. And that's how, 10 years, 15 years was like that. I think I went to 5 different third grades. It was a lot of moving. So it's very hard to put. But my grandparents lived in that house until my grandfather died. My grandmother was coerced into selling it and moving into an apartment. And by then, my mother and I were probably in Michigan or Detroit when all that was going on. Yeah. And, I come back, I get married. I'm off by myself. I'm in the Army. I'm gone. I got kids of my own. I come back 25 years later, and I start figuring out what happened to all these places. The farmhouse is gone. The little gray house is gone. And I start talking to them about, oh, my God, that's gone? Yeah, the highway goes through where it used to be. The highway, I guess, paid for the house to be demolished, which killed me because my grandfather built that house with his own hands. He ordered it out of the Sears catalog back when they first got married. So it meant something to me. So I was trying to think of things that were in that house that might be solid I get my hands on, honestly, for memories. And I thought about that Singer sewing machine. And when I said that, that's when it started getting into the great-grandma, and that's when I found out that all that time I had spent with her in the cellar, all the things she had taught me, Donny, all the things that basically now I'm seeing, she came back from the other side to make sure I knew them, that they were in my head, that I would not forget them. My heritage, traditions, her blood. And that's when I found out that she had actually died at least 4 years before any of that could have ever happened. So, the times lined up in my head, if that makes sense. I was like, oh my gosh, Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Well, your great-grandmother sounds like she was either a very advanced soul or she had some real strong magic,
Let not be, baby. You're talking a mother's love. You're talking love that strong. You're talking it had very little to do with me. The way I see it. Perhaps if we just think about it in this way, and everybody in the chat thinks about it. If you're a spirit and you have these traditions, heaven knows how close she was to her traditions and her culture as a young girl. I know she had my great-grandmother in 1890. So my grandmother was brought up by my great-grandmother and great-grandfather to hide who you were. Even to the point where it got to my mom was just starting to talk about it. 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And now I won't shut up about it. So it took that long. But she had to live her whole life denying who she was. And maybe in her heart, she thought traditions would die with her. Let me find the one that's never going to forget, that is going to remember this, that can see me, that I can work with, and maybe that, the combination of those two profound things, maybe it helped her ascend higher to get that taken care of, to leave that treasure with someone. where she wasn't just passing and letting it go. And that's the way I look at it, because, you know, if people can be stuck here as ghosts, at least for a short time, and you hear all the time, well, they have unfinished business. Well, what would that unfinished business be? I've heard everything from helping the wife find the insurance papers because she's going nuts looking for them, and the ghost's trying to help her, you know, so he can go and make sure that she gets all the stuff handled, because it's those things that are most important to that human essence, you know. Or, you know, is it something about finding a letter that's more heartfelt, that explains something profound to that family, to that relationship, what's important to that Revolutionary War soldier, you know? What were those letters with the red ribbon? Were those letters that he had carried from a loved one, and they were cherished in his jacket? And was he in that hidden room behind the staircase? It was actually a hidden room. Somebody had built a wall and closed off, built a pantry. And on the other side of this wall, from what I discovered at the same reunion, by the way, was servant's staircase going up. And on the other side of the door that the stairs led to was my sister's room. And it just happened to be the closet. Now you're on the other side. Go around. Go through the kitchen where the pies got taken. Going into the dining room and the living room. Coming around, going up the main staircase, and up around to where the bedroom my sister stayed. Is big, beautiful 200-year-old farmhouse when we lived in it. You know, if they had let it stand, but the bastards tore it down too and built the development. So, people. So anyway. Beautiful house. So you go out and you go around and go into her bedroom where she kept screaming and saying, "There's a man in my room." He was always standing by the closet.
Yeah.
The other side of that closet door, if you opened it and could go through that wall that they took down, stairs. So there's a little hidden room, and that's where supposedly the papers and stuff were found that got burned. We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Was he hiding in there, like from enemy soldiers, or maybe he was, you know, hidden out by the farmers who lived there, or wounded, you know, and died in there? Oh gosh, you know, I've never forgot him. Yeah. I wonder now if it's some of those developments of one of those, you know, snooty women up there with those great big, those double sink bathrooms or something, that are brushing their teeth and got a Revolutionary War soldier standing next to him, and he doesn't know why he's there any more than she does, because everything got shifted and disheveled. And I wonder what happens to them then. You know, I guess it depends on the individual ghost.
Maybe there's a guy whose job it is on the other side to on the other side and come collect them. Be like, okay, you've had enough time.
Yeah. Here. Well, you know, there are, and they, you know, it's funny that you say that, because they are on both sides. I was thinking after last night's show how to best describe to people that stop getting hung up on religion, because it's all about the light you carry in yourself. What that's connected to is up to you. That's personal. Yeah. But you have a light, and you know, when you're walking through and these things notice you because of that light, you know, we're walking over here and it's a little different for them because they're out of their element. They're stuck in between, depending on where they're stuck, you know, because some are stuck in that, what I used to have a really good friend, and the best name for it, she was voodoo, she was really high up in it too. She called it the Unseelie Fae. And one of her jobs was to go in and get lost souls and reshift them and try to get them go to the light, because they were caught in that their vantage point, their own darkness, their own box that they built for themselves. Very much like Marley coming back to Scrooge with all his chains and all his cash boxes, and that chains he had forged in life for himself with his deeds and his choices, yeah? And she used to go in there and try to get them to listen. And I would listen to her stories, and some would listen, some would go, she wasn't really good at calling from the other side loved ones to help cross. Some people have that gift. Somehow that sometimes works for me, especially if I really got my dander up, like with the breeze, the one Stephen. I don't know where Stephen went. He fell out. I hope he comes back in. He was having technical problems, but I'll probably be telling the same story by the time he gets back in. So anyway, you know, sometimes I'll get so, not mad, but just like, I'm trying to find the right word, just adamant. You know, it's like, that's it, I'm getting his mother. And somehow that energy, even though it's done with that kind of sharpness, it still has that love connection, because we've already been trying to work with the spirit to try to remember how love feels. Because as soon as you start remembering how a hug feels or something like that, your vibration starts to change. You start getting that warm feeling, and you start remembering what it was like to hug your dog when, you know, you came home from school, or, you know, whatever it is that brings it to you. It's that way with these spirits. And it's harder for somebody, say, like a soldier who just came out of battle, and that's the last thing they remember. It's also hard for somebody who is constantly dragging themselves down into a depression and won't allow themselves to come up, even when good things happen. We all know those people. And it's like something good, or somebody gives them a compliment and they reject the compliment. They don't feel like they deserve it. Or something good happens, they said, yeah, but this. You know, they won't even allow themselves to be happy. Well, that's why I try so much to put light out there and say, look, we got to get that off you now. You know, screw whatever anybody else tells you. Nobody else has power over you and your mind and your heart and your light. So you have to break that off, like Marley, break those chains of all that stuff that's trying to drag you down, and be happy in spite of it all. Because nothing holds you back faster than that. So with great-grandma, maybe that was her burden. Maybe she felt that she wasn't strong enough or brave enough. She was scared. You know, because fear is absolutely a wonderful persuader. You know, I don't care who you are. If you're scared of something, it's going to have more power over you, you know. And these people, everybody was afraid to, there he is, he's back. Everybody was afraid because they'd get sent to a camp or get sent to the Carlisle school, or have everything and all your goods taken away from you, you know. It's powerful. It's a lot of emotion there, so... To answer your question, yeah. It did. It had a huge effect. She was something. And I believe that could be considered magic, Donny, depending on what you put, how you define magic in your heart. I sincerely believe that love is the strongest magic out there. It's the strongest energy. It has 0 expiration date. I've got people that come back and tell me that I trust with just about with my soul. Certainly my heart, that come and tell me, you know, it's the little things, man, you know, it's the little stuff that gets stuck in, you know, but it's also the stuff like Marley that forged over life, the burden that they have to come back and release, you know, come back and ask for forgiveness because they weren't the best mother they could be. You know, I got caught up in addiction, and I was selfish, and I loved you so much, it hurt so much, it made me do it more, you know, whatever excuse it is that they've made. But it's that box. It's like What Dreams May Come, where she's sitting in the blackness, blaming yourself for her daughter's death, and the husband loving him enough to walk into what my friend called the unseelie fae and walk her through. But I'm telling you, it's hard when you're just rejecting everything, and that's what happens. Like here in life, they are that way in death, and the reject, you know, but we love you. Nobody loves me, you know, but we care. Nobody cares about me, you know. Whatever lies that life has put on them, you know. My sister, the one I said was in the Navy, and she was one of the people that was in that farmhouse and well affected by it, I may add, both before and after she served. But she happened to, at that time, choose what was called an alternative lifestyle. And when she was in the Navy, she realized that she fell in love with one of her mates. And they both quit and didn't tell anybody in the house and came home and sprang it on everybody. Now, this is 1965-ish. You know, things were different. There was some good and some bad that happened out of that. But my sister took off and nobody didn't talk to anybody for 35 years. So she lost all the time with family. The family lost all the time with her because of a small little misunderstanding that was surrounded with a powder keg of emotion and a lot of ignorance and a lot of fear. And at the end of that life, I was driven almost 1,800 miles to sit at her bed for a solid probably 6-7 hours and do what Native Americans call sing her over. Because she had been so polluted with thoughts of religion won't accept me, nobody loves me, who could love me, I can't even love me, all of this stuff. And she's stuck in the unseelie fae, the purgatory, the darkness, the in between. And she won't turn around and look at my mother. And my mother's going, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around. I can hear it. And I'm doing the same thing. And I had to sing her over with love and get her past all the lies she'd been told about religion, that, you know, this and that, and she was wrong, and all this stuff is wrong, and all that judgment, all those rules that mean nothing, have nothing to do with spirituality and love and the core and your light, nothing. So I know what it's like for people to suffer because they have been held back with fear. And that's why I think my great-grandmother came back. That was magic.
Man, I'm going to need to crack open a beer after that story.
It's true, though. You know, and I bet you people in the chat just kind of like they pulled over for a minute. But that's profound. Because that's what the dead are dying to tell us, man. Get it done now. Handle it now. Make good choices now. Be good human beings now. You're accountable. It counts. And either somebody's going to be pulling you out, or if you know, I've gone in for more strangers, you know. And again, it's all spirituality. It's all universal people using their gifts in love, all of different nationalities, all of different belief systems. I stood next to a black belt Buddhist, wonderful lady. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Boy, that girl could move. She was like a gymnast. Two voodoo, one was a voodoo priestess. She was 5th generation removed from Madame Laveau. I'm like into this serious. When I saw her pull out stuff and start wrapping string around something, I'd either boogie or go, just tell me it's not me. You know, I've stood next to left-handed witches, and you want to talk about magic and power. I'm talking about left-handed just, and it's done. I've stood with people who could spell so well, and their energy so strong when they wrote with their finger, you can see it in the light. I mean, these kind of people. Right next to a Pentecostal pastor, 2 prayer warriors from his congregation, a Southern Baptist, and 2 very fine Mormons who had a wonderful singing voice, all gathered together to help a woman in the center of the circle, sitting, no joke, surrounded with cornmeal, honey, and some other thing to the spirit. I believe was a bottle of good fine whiskey. And all of these people, to spite whatever religious label they had on them, used their gifts in unison to break a curse that was a bloodline curse on this woman who was writhing in pain in the center of the circle when it began and crying at the end, I assure you. And nobody asked anybody, what do you believe? Because everybody knew we had come there in love, and we gathered those together. And those traditions would die, Donny, if people didn't keep that up. If people didn't make it their own, it might not even be your bloodline, but you're being called to it, your memory of your DNA or something, whether it's to tarot or gifted to read or communicate with the dead or do readings, or you know what I mean? It's important. I just think it's important. I think our consciousness is raising. I think a lot of people are ready to hear this kind of stuff, and they're going to start shedding those labels that separate instead of focusing on the things that unify all of us. Our common needs, our common decencies, our common sense, Did I hope that answered your question?
So then I guess that then takes me to the last chapter, which was the Gettysburg. How did you know how to do that? When you help pass the soldier's blood, like, how did you know, like, that you could do it? How did you know how to do it? Where did you learn that?
I didn't know I could do it. I didn't know I was supposed to do it. I didn't know how to do it. I went on complete instinct and absolute trust in the universe and the spirits that were guiding me, and that's the God's honest truth. I take zero. I take all responsibility because it was my choice, but I take none of the credit because I tried to back out of that trip so many times, it wouldn't leave me alone, man. Gettysburg was calling me for a reason, and I was at the point in my life where I'd watched myself make decisions and choices all my life, and I think I got to the point where I was like, okay, you guys do it, because I obviously don't know what I'm doing. I thought I was supposed to do this, and the universe shifts and I go over here, and it was kind of like not a give up, but more like fighting the river as I'm being carried down the river of life, and I'm fighting every inch, and I'm just giving myself credit because I can get a breath every now and then. I must be doing well. And then I came to a point in my life where I just realized that if I just kicked back and quit fighting and put my hands behind my head, I could watch the sun and get the warmth, and I'd still go down the river, but on a much smoother ride. That's where that clicked in for me. And I started letting spirit show me what you want me to do. And I would talk to my son, and he thought he was going to get paid, but he wouldn't get paid till after. We were like that tight at the time, just money's always that way. And the exact amount, I kid you not, amount that he would have paid came in a coupon to the hotel we were going to go to without me looking it up. It was in my email. Things like that. Things like knocking over the DVDs in the drugstore, and they all face up were Gettysburg, the movie. And I thought, okay, I just knocked over a display at Gettysburg. The other two were different movies when I flipped them over. That's like, go. I mean, if you're poo-pooing that kind of stuff, man, you need a slap in the head, But that's how I knew to go. I didn't know why I was going, but I felt. Yeah, I felt that I was going to wind up in a spot where I was going to be able to help somebody. I knew that much. How? Who? No clue. I left it all up to the spirits. And just that one moment in that cellar, it was at the basement of the Farnsworth Inn right before we were going on a tour. Because I just kept setting up places that we could be and trying to hit as many as I could because I didn't know where I was supposed to be. That's how crazy it was. And when I got with him and he said a few things, we kind of connected. I could see he was an old vet. He was jaded. He was tired of this. He was tired of the disrespect. He was tired of the tours and people asking him, what, Steve, playing Dixie on the Union side just to irritate him, and asking him what the war was like and what's it like to be shot, and all these impertinent, horrible questions. And I walked in there, 5'4", did not know. I hate to say it, but no left to give. You know what I mean? Where I kept them was empty because I was, tired. I said, I'm here for something. I could feel it. And when I was talking to him and he was talking about that, and I could see how much he cared about the little spirit of the little girl that's in that house. And she's still there, by the way. She's not stuck. She just visits. She gets a lot of attention, so she comes back and forth. But when he took us there and he's walking us on that field, and when I had asked him right before we left, I said, do you think that, now you got to know me a little bit, because we had talked during his set talk, And he starts going up the steps. And I said, do you think that if you get us out there, you'd walk off and let me be a minute, let me try something? He goes, oh, are you going to try to get EVPs? I said, no, man. I said, I'm going to cross them. And he changed in that moment, Donny, when he looked at me. His face kind of let go of, it was making a fist before. And he just kind of relaxed his look, and his eyes glinted a little, and he goes, I think I will. And I said, thank you very much. And when we went out, we stood under the tree, I said, Joe, that tree. And he starts going off on this. It was so great. This guided tour, instantaneous. I had hit a button. He goes, that's a witness tree. That tree was here during the battle. And he just goes off on this thing. I'm like, I know, Joe. It's okay. I know. They're sitting in it. I said, go. I could feel them. I could feel that that's where I was supposed to be at that moment in time, right then and there. They were going to listen. I felt the energy, the connection, the tingle, whatever you want to call it. And I just sat down and got right to it. And I give them all the credit too, because they had been around every hour, on the hour, Monday through Friday, probably 4 times on a Saturday night. Had seen people coming in with this equipment. The well-worn path, Donny, remember? So now they might not have wanted that path, but there might have been a couple that were, here they come again. They're going to start, what are you talking to them for? You could hear it. But in their language, in their time, in the things that they understood from their perspective, So how crazy do we look to them if they can see us, right, Steve? I mean...
Yeah, indeed.
People coming in there with all this flash and equipment and whatnot, But no, I can't take any credit for knowing how to do it. I followed my heart and my intent. And when I looked down, I had the dowsing rods because I felt that would be right. And I've always gone for non-techie things I can understand, just to, what's the word I'm looking for, Steve? Validate what I was already feeling, like you do with the tarot cards. For a long time you did tarot, and then you just I don't even need these cards. It's more to validate. Yes, I was getting a yes on that. But when I asked and got a yes, the dowsing rods would cross and uncross. The EMF meter at my foot would go all the way up to red, go back down. And the flashlight, if the flashlight was at my feet that Joe put there and took up and put back down again, it went on and off with it. I didn't have to tell them to do all that. They already knew. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. More in 20 minutes than you're going to see on 4 seasons on we say that all the time. We joke when people I know how many people in here that do paranormal investigation and know great people that do. When you go in with that kind of intent and you're guided completely by spirits, I mean, how in the world can it not work? If my people obviously their people got with my people and went and got the crazy redhead. I mean, just think about it like that. It wasn't me, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to this spot, I'm going to bring these things, I'm going to do this stuff. None of that happened. I showed up and I was used like somebody uses a Ouija board or somebody uses a thing. They used me as a bridge.
And that goes back to the point that I brought up earlier with the first chapter, it coming full circle, is maybe all of those experiences you had leading up to that point were kind of what allowed you to be able to do that.
It's possible. It's possible. And the sheer will of, everybody says that, Native Americans have that connection with nature. And I agree that. But also, it's how you are. I mean, just because you say, okay, that person's Native American. I met Native American that had no intention whatsoever of anything to do with tradition or, make that part of their life. So it's not the blood. It's the DNA memory. It's the soul memory. It's the willingness of the essence of your being to be that. And it's also everyone who walked before you that had and did the same. I'm told many times my spirit guides are a lot of Native American, many of them women, and a lot of them animals. And I can understand that. And I'm wondering if they don't use me for a voice because they all too had to be silent, and have that true grit, that quiet, true grit to fight on, to not be extinct. And I think that goes for any culture that does the same. I think it's wonderful when families come together in two different cultures and they celebrate both, because that those children are both combined and they're both beautiful, and should, the traditions in between should be melded together, and that's so cool. Not to conform, but to be that person's own new thing. And that's the cool part about people coming together with their differences and just making a new beautiful thing instead of it being one or the other. And I think a lot of us are doing that. I'm surprised a lot of traditions have lasted this long. But in most cases, if we don't hang on to the things that count, take care of nature, I'm not talking about global warming. I'm talking about all the land we're eating up and pushing the animals. And then there's too many animals, so let's kill all them off because they're creating a problem over here. And it's like eventually, cut off your nose to spite your face there. They don't want to be extinct either.
This actually kind of reminds me of a question I had for Steve.
Yeah.
Go ahead, buddy.
Because we were talking earlier, Cisco, about your great grandmother, and then
yes,
in Steve's thoughts on that chapter, you talk about your own grandmother, about how she was like really into superstitions and the paranormal, and I was just wondering what her background was.
Well, don't really know that much about her, believe it or not. They came from the Cades Cove area of the Smokies. Her family did. That's where they landed when they came over from England and Scotland. And I don't know where she learned to do the things she did. She called herself a gypsy witch, but I don't know where the gypsy part came from, unless some part of the family was from Eastern Europe. But in Appalachia, she's what's called a granny witch. She told fortunes. Like I said, she could read tea leaves, coffee grounds. She practiced phrenology, which is kind of a lost art now, but 100 years ago, that was the practice of telling your future by feeling the bumps on your head. It's kind of like palmistry, but it uses the head. She knew all about any kind of superstitions or any kind of signs or anything like that. They slaughtered their own pork. And in the fall, when they had the slaughter, she would pick out one pig that was her pig. And when they slaughtered that one, she would poke around in the entrails and predict how next season's harvest was going to be. And she was surprisingly accurate. According to my uncles, she was as accurate as the Old Farmer's Almanac, which they literally lived and died by back then. So she had talents. She had things I used to think she could read my mind. There were things that she said to me that had been thoughts in my head that she had no way of knowing. So I don't know where she got all those powers.
I guess your suspicion is that it comes from like a European gypsy tradition.
I think so.
You kind of cut out there. You were unaware what?
Well, I was just wondering if it's so like a lot of what her background was like from Europe and from I guess.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can figure, because a lot of the superstitions and things that she carried over, they were prevalent in Appalachia. Mostly came over with the Scots and the Irish, but then some of them I have traced back to Eastern Europe, some of the beliefs and things that she had. And like I said, she called herself a gypsy witch, so I'm thinking somewhere back in there, they're probably Romania or somewhere like that, was where they originally started and then made their way to the UK and then from there to the States.
There's magic in all those cultures, though. I'm telling you what, whether it be, traveling gypsies, whether it be, going back to, Chinese tradition, India, just you name it. There is magic in all that. Like look at all the people that brought so much back from Africa and brought it here, and you started hearing that coming up, and then you've got Santeria, and you've got all this other stuff. I mean, it's all over. And again, it doesn't matter what label it is, because each one has a magic, something to manipulate the energies, encourage the energies of the universe, connect in with your your vibration, your soul, your chakras, whether it be metaphysical stones or, you're putting the name of your loved one under your bed in a jar of honey and repeating his name 3 times before you go to bed. It's all got something in it, whether you're tossing runes or reading bones or entrails like Steve's granny used to do, or reading tea leaves. It's all the same. I mean, it's obviously there's some kind of energy.
Grounds. I'd never heard of anybody reading coffee grounds, but worked the same way as tea leaves. She would have a person drink coffee, turn the saucer upside down, lift it up, and then it's almost like a form of scrying. She would see shapes and things in those coffee grounds and then interpret that. She's also good at interpreting dreams and big on the signs and stuff. If you heard a crow call 3 times, that meant this, that, or the other, or heard an owl hoot in the daytime.
Dropped a broom, company was coming in the direction the handle was pointing in. Yep, I still remember that one.
You dropped silverware.
Your palm itch, you're getting money. Money was coming. Or your nose
depends on which palm. If it was your left one, you're getting money. If it was your right one, you're going to be outlaying some money.
What is it with that? Is it the power of suggestion and, then coincidence that reaffirms, because it doesn't happen every time. It happens once. We'll remember that one time it happened where 10 times it didn't. I think it has a lot to do with your mind and your intent on that, too. And a lot of people say the same as with ghosts, that it's a hallucination, or they're not there, or, it's something else pretending to be that. People ask me that all the time. How do you know it's good and not bad? Well, honey, you can feel it. Yeah. Most of the time I can feel bad coming before it gets here. And I'll tell you, extreme good, you can feel that way too.
You have that discernment. I've had people come to me and say, well, I keep hearing this voice tell me something, but I don't know if it's God or the devil. That's an easy one to check. Anything that's good, it's going to exhort, edify, or comfort you or someone else. And if you believe in the Bible, anything evil, anything from Satan or the devil, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So there's your rules to figure out who's talking to you.
Your discernment, your moral compass and all that. And it's not just your moral compass with your thoughts, because there's something that is stronger than even thought, and that's your feeling, your senses. You have so many, and they say the 6th sense. Well, I honestly believe there's more than that, because you really do. I can remember, do you remember in the book, Donny, where I was talking about the visits from my mother? Which is why I said that in the beginning of the book, not only did I dedicate it to her, but I said she has been my #1 teacher in life and in death. Because when she first came to me and I saw her, she still had the earthly burdens. Later on, like she was obviously in pain. But then I realized I wasn't waking up because of the noise or the crackling. Sometimes I heard an electrical crackling almost as strong as like squeezing a water bottle. That kind of crackling, that kind of loud. And sometimes I wouldn't, but it always felt the pain. And it took me forever to figure out I was feeling her pain. And that's what woke me up, and it was profound. But even to the point of trying to remember how my cat acted when she was in the room. She's purring and looking at my mother. She's not hissing. She's not doing what I called super biggest kitty, is what I called her when she was little, because she would just poof out. She was Persian, so when she got mad, or scared, she'd poof out like, a cartoon, But she didn't do that around my mother. There was other things, some things that were walking around in the yard, could have been the snot woman, could have been 10,000 other things, but she would, and the hair would go up on her tail, would get puffy first, and then the hairs on the back would start. But she never did that around my mom. But I would feel that pain first, and that's, I started looking into being an empath and what did it mean? Why am I picking up other people's energy like this? And, so a lot of that taught me all of that mess.
Yeah, and some of those, there must be some nugget of truth in there somewhere, like one of the absolute notes I see Aunt Edna in there in the chat talking about never put your shoes on the table or the bed because it's bad luck. That's the worst thing you could do to my grandma in her house was put a hat on the bed. Yep. I remember one time I'd put a hat on her bed and I heard this wail come from her bedroom later. I thought somebody was dying.
Dying, yeah.
I ran in there and said, who put this hat on the bed?
Yeah.
And excuse me, and I owned up to it. She threw it at me. She said, "Don't you ever do that." She said, "You might as well take a pistol and shoot somebody in the head."
Yeah.
And I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, scared the absolute crap out of me.
Isn't that crazy?
But I didn't put a hat on the bed anymore. And to this day, if I see somebody put a hat on the bed, I see a Zeppelin.
Yeah. That's a bad one. The salt over the shoulder.
It was salt. The
spill
shoes,
salt.
one shoe's big at is you don't walk with one shoe off or one shoe on. You leave by the same door you came. Like
Yep.
you went to her house, you came in the back door, you better leave by the back door. She caught you going out the front door, she'd make you come back in. You had to sit, lift your feet up off the ground for so many seconds, and then go out the door you came in.
That's
And
wow.
that also worked. Like if you left and then had to come back in to get something, you had to sit down and lift your feet for a few seconds. No clue what that was all about, but by God, I did it, because I didn't want to.
I agree here with Daryl, though. Daryl, he's absolutely right. It is draining, Daryl. That's the thing. But you know what? When you're a child, and the things I was going through, and I tried to put that in the book. I hope it came out. Donny, I'm just thrilled tonight to know that the things that you picked up while you were reading this was what I was trying to portray. Even the fact that it came full circle from. I honestly believe that Revolutionary War soldier really did start me on that path, because I've always wanted to help. I've always felt sorry for him. I always felt bad I had to leave him behind. I didn't care a thing for the thing in the garage or the one in the cellar. But that soldier, again, I never, just like I felt the feelings off my mother and her pain first, and then the overwhelming love and the warmth that kind of overrode that pain. It was so much in one session. These emotions sound almost harder to explain than to experience them. It almost takes longer, just like the head coming at me. It takes so long to explain how it got bigger and bigger and bigger until I fell backwards, and now it's above me, and I could see that ponytail waving behind with that red ribbon in it that matched his eyes. And as a kid, that's all I could say, red ribbon, red eyes. But by saying that, I also got my first confirmation when I overheard my sister saying to my mom, "Red ribbon, red eyes, Mom, just like I saw." And then she got a shh, 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 because again, you didn't talk about it. But my little ears heard that. And I clung to that and go, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. But it's a terrible thing. And the burden, I don't think, is the gift as much as it is the emotion and the trauma, Steve, that we pick up from other people. Like we're trying to give them a message of love and they reject it. I had one happen to me very recently at work, and you have to be so careful. I kept getting Sweet Melissa. The woman's name is, Melissa. I mean, the messages were, you couldn't doubt them. They were so profound. And I knew this message was for her. Somebody she loved was trying to give her a serious message. And this is how strong energy is. I said, I'm convinced there's someone on this side that's trying to give you a message. Are you willing to receive it? She said no. The minute she said no, that door shut. Never heard from them again. They were rejected. And I was talking to her about, again, you can't poke at it. You got to let it come up natural and trust that the spirits will get her to say something if I need to say something. I mean, that's just the way I have to do it. I mean, what do I know? I'll mess it up if I try to. You know what I mean? You got to stay out of it, too. Like Gettysburg.
Yeah, sometimes I've done that. You have a message specifically for someone.
Yeah.
Give the message and then run because, whatever they do with it, that's on them then. Yeah. And you don't want to influence it or mess it up. Just, this is what I know. This is what I saw. I think this is meant for you. Do with it what you will and leave me out of it.
Yeah.
Because you can get caught up in things like that where people keep coming to you and, what does this mean? And what did that mean? And I did that.
And the dead do it as well. The dead do it as well. But I can't shut it off. Like I could never get that person that was trying to come through. They've tried everything, music and on the radio, a song I couldn't stop singing that I hadn't heard of in forever. Yeah. Just weird things like this and all these little things. Especially when she was around, I could feel the energy, the electricity got a little higher, and nobody can shut it off like their own person. As it works that way, the same as she shut it off. Now, what if they had something? I had an idea they had something to do with, wanted to give them a warning about one of their pets. And 3 days later, her cat passed because they thought it was one thing and it was another. And who knows if they had known about, I mean, who's to tell? But if my loved one was trying to give me a message, what if that was it? I'm not saying it was, but I felt it could have been. Because I was getting that kind of, I was seeing cat. I was seeing, I had no idea how it fit. But, again, you got to take yourself out of it. It's none of your business. It's their business. And it was her business to open or shut that door, and she did. Now, it works the other way, folks. You open that door, too. Just like Steve, as simple as Steve looking at me, and I said, Steve, do I have your permission to carry your energy to my friend so we can find out what's going on with this ghost? Won't leave you alone.
Cool breeze, the guy on the motorcycle.
Right. And he said yes. And I was able to sit in front of the medium, say, I'm not here for me. I'm here for a friend. He's given you permission to read his energy. And the minute I said that, she was able to connect into his energy, knew right away what we were talking about without me saying another word.
Even told you to quit
That's
looking at the
energy.
motorcycle, even though you hadn't mentioned the motorcycle.
Hadn't mentioned a word about it. That's energy. I can't explain it any better than that. But people seem to think they're all welcoming when the energy works good. But they won't accept the fact that it works the bad, too. The bad can work it the same way. So, yes, there are things telling you stuff and pushing on cracks. What did she say? You going to let her get away with saying that? You shouldn't let her get away with saying that.
No.
I'm not joking. And it pushes and it pushes and it pushes. And just like Donny said with that stuff pushing on my dad, I guarantee it was getting well fed in that house. If they fed on fear and anger and jealousy and angst,
And then the
teenage
fact that there's
angst.
teenage girls there too. Yeah, that just
It was a powder
perfect
keg.
storm. Yeah.
Powder keg. Everything that happened on that land, whatever was in that garage, all of that stuff. But you could also see, Donny picked up on this too as my life went through. And one thing kind of went into the other. That's how I wrote it, but that's also how it happened. If you notice, like if something happened in chronological order, I try to put it that way. But I'd also go back and say, but aha, look at this. This is similar, like the jumpers and the grinners, or something like that, where over several different experiences throughout my life came together to get me to understand at this point where I am with that and what they're able to do.
Yeah.
Which is incredible to see. And it's more incredible. What am I going to do to warn? Hey, you got a ghost in you? You want another beer? What am I going to do? So in that case, people could say a gift is a curse because I can't do anything to help. Well, I know I can't do anything to help, so I might as well at least just stand back and see if I can make it help not get worse. Like not let them hurt themselves, like if they tried to get in a car or something, I guess I have to do something a little bit more drastic. But, people won't listen. This woman wouldn't even listen from a loved one. I mean, can you imagine having somebody come up to you and say, I think you have a loved one that's been trying to come through. Are you open to getting a message? No. Well, see, now I know somebody's going to have to deal with that mess because obviously there's some issues there. Who's going to sing her across? Who's going to lean over her for 7 hours and sing her across
But
so
it
she's
is
not
good
stuck
to be
in the dark?
wary of that stuff. So I understand when you try to tell some people.
Oh, sure.
I've had people come up to me before, back when I used to go to my brother's church. I'd have somebody come up to me afterwards and God told me to tell you this. And immediately I'm like, yeah.
That'll scare the hell out of you, dude.
I talk to God every day. And
there's
he can tell me.
definitely a bedside manner it goes with the shit. I'm telling you. I see, listen, I have nothing against anybody and how they handle their gift or what they decide to do with it. That pretty much speaks for itself with the person and the outcome, yeah? Some people have TV shows. Some people sit in their living room and, take appointments by the hour. I mean, who am I to judge? But I do have something against what I call psychic snipers. They'll come running up to you at the grocery store like that. So I have a message for. It's like, hold on, wait a minute. But what's the good approach? What's the good approach? You try to do it gentle, and like this woman, I've tried to tell a couple of times, like I eased her into it, said, I think somebody's trying to give you a message. I keep hearing this song. And she turns on the radio in her car and it plays, but that wasn't enough for her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you try to ease them into it, like
I have no answers.
Named Peggy, or
Yeah,
something like that.
I have no answers, man. But I mean, I wonder, if she had said yes, and they had said, it's not the cat's liver, it's this. What if? I'm not saying it was, but what if? Because I have had things like that happen where I did get to see the other side of an unwanted message.
And sometimes though things can change. I've had things like that happen where you get a premonition or you get a flash, and then whether you do or don't tell them, I've seen it where it looked like that was what was going to happen, but then at the last minute something else would happen, and you always wonder, if you didn't tell them, was it because I didn't tell them that it didn't happen, or did something else, since I didn't tell them, did something else prevent it from happening? So you never know.
It's hard
where your part is in there, and just you have to have your own discernment as far as other people decide. I'm going to keep that to myself, because sometimes things aren't meant to share, like that frightening thing I had happen to me where I saw the guy killed with the concrete pipes.
And you couldn't do anything to stop it.
There was absolutely nothing I could do to stop that.
Yeah.
And just after lots of reflecting and thinking about that, it's just the conclusion that I've reached, and I've bounced this off other people, was sometimes things are just going to happen. There's not anything you can do to prevent
sometimes they're meant to be. Like
now,
we talked about
I would know about it if I can't fix it.
Right.
But that's
it's
just,
like having those cards,
that's
Steve.
the universe letting you know that sometimes you see things.
It's a card you were dealt.
Sometimes you can't do F all about it, but you know things.
That's 100%. And it's hurtful too when you want to help somebody and they don't listen. And I'll tell you who it is, Donnie. The most people, it's the ones you want to help the most that don't.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes they'll come around later and go, boy, I should have listened to that. I'm like, man, it has nothing to do with me. Like Edna said here, I'll tell them and I'll look right at them. I say almost the same thing. I say, mark it, because it's going to happen. And I tried to say it has nothing to do with me. It's them. They're trying to tell you. And they do it so rarely because they usually not allowed, from what I understand, to drive you or get involved. You are still free will making your choices. Like I say, why did the guardian angel let me hit the tree? Because you're probably supposed to hit the tree. Don't blame your guardian angel. You probably picked it on the other side as something you had to work through, or whatever you want to say that's like that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. But they will give you signs and they will help you, and they most certainly will get together to help the dead. I was in that room helping that little 8-year-old girl that her mother drowned. And that whole room was filled with living souls, all in their own way, praying, sending love energy, sending light to this little girl. Most of them could not see. I didn't go around and interview everybody. Some saw, some didn't. But all felt, if you know what I'm saying. There's all these strangers. We don't even know each other, let alone little girl.
No.
And here we are, and then there's people on the other side, human people that were human beings that love this little girl or love us or are connected to somebody in the room or to the house or to the land, and everybody gathered in that moment to help an 8-year-old soul cross over that night that had been in that house for 130 some years and didn't feel love again till that night. That's magic. You bet it's magic.
Indeed.
It's cool. When it works out like that, it's cool.
I've always said that love is the currency of the spirit world.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. That was a good analogy.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, man, this has been fantastic. I think we got probably time for one more, and then we got to probably let everybody go. But your questions have been fantastic. I'm sorry that the answers have been so long in some cases, but it's a multi-layered thing. There are no easy answers sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the answers only bring more questions. That's what we've found.
That's what happens
with most things involving the supernatural.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on so many chapters. I'm
Well,
like,
gosh,
man, we only
we
took
can always do a
like
part two.
2
We can always do a part two, and I'll tell you why I think this is important. It has nothing to do with me writing the book. The important thing is the fact that these things happened, and Donnie's asking really good questions that open up a lot of other doors, windows, thoughts, variations, variants, vantage points, and we're thinking about stuff, and there's so many different types of things that happen in the book, either to me or to Steve.
I mean, that was the main thing I got
It's amazing.
from the book, was just that it was all meant to happen. It felt like it was just kind of, you were supposed to experience everything. Like that Red Ribbon guy was just like, okay, I'm going to take this girl and throw her to you, Lenape Grandma. And then Lenape Grandma's like, I'm going to take her and throw her to you, Snot Hag.
I'm going to get her, yeah. My great-grandmother... Yeah, I think that was more for my great-grandmother than for me. I think she really had to do something like that to ascend higher or let go or something along those lines. But it also, as with everything in this book and everything that happened to Steve and everything that happened to anybody in this chat or you, Donnie, it all is multi-layered. And if you back up and look at it again, it has all these little, like you said, Easter eggs and surprises in there. It's like, wow, I never thought about that. Or this played off of that and helped this person. Or this person got knocked this way and it might not look like it helped them, but it put them in that direction. And this is, what happened with them. And that's the way life is. And all we do here in the paranormal is is include the dead in that life.
Yeah.
Because there's so much wisdom to be found if we just listen.
Maybe it's like in A Wonderful Life, maybe something you're doing, you just helped an angel get their wings, so to speak. Maybe you helped somebody else that's working through something on another plane or another level, that you were a tool or a vessel, either voluntarily or involuntarily.
And we all are.
And that happens, like when the motorcycle guy. How many people did we have all together involved? Like
7 or 8, yeah. 7 or 8 at one point in time. We had remote viewers. We had everything. And the man would only talk to the guys. He wouldn't talk to any of the women. But that's so typical of like a 1%er, the bike clubs and stuff like that, or, in a lot of different spiritual beliefs and things like that. There's this like disdain to speak to women on really important matters. This is business.
Then he was afraid of his mother and afraid of what she would think of him.
Yeah.
And didn't want to know that he had died, probably doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing.
And that's in the book as well. That's actually an extra chapter. When we put the book in print, we added these extra chapters from the ebook, so it would also load up on the ebook, so the people that bought the ebook the first year would get the bonus chapters. At least the way they were told, that's the way it would work, right, Steve? Yeah. Amazon sometimes it has its own mind. Go ahead.
Do you plan on doing an audio version with you and Steve? Kind of recording.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
I'd be down to do it if Cisco.
I would do it. Yeah, I would do it. Yeah. I think it would be cool.
I think
it would be very cool. I absolutely love doing the cabin.
We can do an audible version, and then Amazon now will also let you do an audio CD.
There you go. That would be great. I also have a couple of people who are blind I'd love to do that for. So.
Another question I had is, because you guys did Cisco's stories, adding Steve's thoughts, is there going to be a book with Steve's stories and then Cisco's thoughts at the end of each
chapter?
That's a possibility.
Wow, that would be so much fun.
At this point, it would.
Wouldn't that be?
Well, in fact, they've asked me to do
fun?
a part
probably
2
be the best way to leave this again.
Strange Things in the Woods, so maybe something like that, and then have her come in and do the commentary on that one.
Yeah, because I never even looked at Steve's stuff before it started to be published, when we were loading it up to put it into chapters. That's how much I trusted
She
this
didn't
man.
see it till it was all together at the end.
And it was my first book, and I did that because I, again, just like Gettysburg and all of this and Steve's experiences, Steve came across the same realization. I don't know when or how his was, but I can guarantee he came across that, where he realizes you're in that river and you're fighting it and you're kicking and screaming and you're just so proud you got your head up enough to get enough air, and you're just paddling and paddling, you're not really getting anywhere, but you're fighting. That's how we go at life sometimes. If you can just realize that you can get a lot faster just by stop fighting the waves and the current, and kind of chill a little bit and pay a little more attention to where you're going and what's going on around you, it gets a little easier.
Sometimes
and I think that's a paranormal
in that
too.
particular paranormal river, you're going to end up in the same place. You can fight against the current, or you can swim along with it and get there faster. But either way, you're going to end up in the same place.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm game for part 2. They're asking for part 2 in the chat. I'll be game to do it. If any of these stories help anybody with understanding their own experiences, that's the whole reason the book's written. We could do this too if Steve wants to put his stories and me come behind and do that. Because the thing is we are looking at that 40,000 foot view at this and trying to see how can we tell this story that might help somebody else who's dealing with grief or dealing with something, a loss.
It's a simple matter.
Or
If you
fear.
haven't noticed, Cisco and I like to talk.
Yeah, man, it is
anything
something.
I enjoy probably as much as writing.
I have a speech impediment. I don't shut up.
And talk about it. I love to get asked to go somewhere and talk about my books, or my writing, or my shows.
Oh, it's fun.
That's part of it.
I get comments all the time about, we talk too much. And I'm like, well, it's a talk show, man. I said, how disappointed would it be if you turned it on? We just sat there like the 3 monkeys and just...
There was one time somebody commented, I was on a show, Cisco and I were on something together, and it was about her book. I think we were on with Shannon talking about this book, and somebody put in the comments, like, I came here to hear Steve, and all I heard was some old woman that won't shut up. And I'm like, how good would that be if we came and I sat here and talked about Cisco's book, and she'd sit there and shake her head and say, that's right, Steve.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
And that's what I comment. I'm like, this is Cisco's book we were talking about.
That's the thing. It's storytelling, too. It's storytelling. It's different, It's different.
This is me interviewing.
What was it Shannon said? We could talk the balls off a brass monkey.
Well, I think you did a great job, Donny, and I think we got a part 2.
On, Donny. Yeah, I'd like to have him back. And
let's do a part 2.
It was Donny, and he didn't even ask any alien questions, so we got to have him back at least one more
gave
time.
him a Christmas present. I got Nomar coming on. We're going to talk about aliens,
I'm looking forward to having Nomar.
We love you so much in the chat.
Yeah.
You just make me chuckle.
I'm in full interviewer mode. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's great. Everybody in the chat makes me laugh, and I don't care if you're throwing up bacon or heart emojis or, talking to somebody else in the chat, trying to lift them up or just ask them how their day is. It's an absolute wonderful experience to be here every Sunday and Monday. I wish I could do it more, and I very well may add some more shows. I don't want to jump on anybody's toes, but we may do that in the future. But right now, I'm comfortable with Sunday Mondays, and I'd love to give another Monday Madness to you, Donny, and have you back, and let's talk about the book some more. And again, not because I wrote the book, but because there's stories in there I'm learning from. I learned some tonight, didn't you? Didn't you guys learn?
We got
were walking away.
Stories to go.
And sometimes when we start talking about even our own stuff, it gives more insight. The more you talk about it, the more you bounce it off other people. And just through the questions you're asking, it makes us think about things and approach it maybe from a different angle or in a different way. Like, hey, I never thought about that before. Thanks for asking that.
And it does reverberate into the chat, Go ahead, Donny. Go ahead.
For anyone in the chat who hasn't read the book, all the stuff we talked about tonight is probably 20% of the stories. There's still other stories, big stories, and a lot of pages that we didn't even bring up.
Thank you.
The whole thing is just exceptional, and I was just blown away when she was sending me those chapters. And sometimes I'd sit there and just too stunned to even start writing my part. It'd take me a while.
Sweet.
Sometimes I'd have to go back and read it 2 or 3 more times. Like, well, did I just read that this happened and that happened? Like, wow. I wanted to make sure that I was getting it right.
Yeah.
It could be crazy, but it is a guided tour through a haunted life. I know that could sound scary, but when it was happening, there was some in there that just scared the pants off me, but a lot of it was more like Donny said, it was almost enjoying in awe of the magic of it all. And I think there's things that happen to each and every one of you. I want to make sure I mention that Aunt Edna said that she was going to do something just like I said, and did an homage this holiday season with something particular. I'm sorry I lost the exact words, but she basically focused on one person and made that a point. And not much longer after that, on the TV, that person's name was spoken 3 times, right where everybody could hear it, and validated that for her. And that's what we were hoping for everybody for this Christmas. If you can't recognize the magic, be the magic. If you don't have magic around you, add that to you. And I think Donny really has been wonderful with reading the story and giving the book time and absorbing it and understanding it and looking at it. Your vantage point, Donny, helped us look at it with new eyes tonight too, and I can't wait to do part 2 with you. You've been absolutely fantastic. I love you in the chat. You make me laugh all the time, and that's what we're here to do, bring light into each other's lives. So I appreciate you so much, man.
Well, it's been a big privilege and honor for even being able to come up here. I'm usually just in the chats, cracking random jokes and stuff. So.
Yeah, but they're so good, and your
one of my
questions,
favorite people in the chat.
Your questions are good.
To entertain.
Everybody's is, in here. And guys, if there's somebody in here that's read the book, Jackie, I know you have. Laura, I believe you have. If there's somebody else that read here that want to join us for the second half of part 2 with Donny, and we can play stuff off, that's pretty cool, because again, we're giving the book new breath a little bit. And I haven't had anybody read it that didn't get something out of it. So if that's the only good thing I do in this life, I did
about
something.
Like this, I'm ready to go read it again and see with new eyes on some of the stuff that I may have just glossed over now, because Donnie's brought up some interesting points.
He certainly has. You're doing so good, Donny. We're going to have you back again, and thank you so much for being a great gatekeeper and a great supporter of this show. I can't tell you how much you're appreciated, man. And everybody in here tonight, thank you so much. I'm sorry if I missed some of the chats that went by, but I will go back and do the double look at the live chat and see if we've got any stuff for our Gatekeepers Gallery. That's one of Steve's favorite parts of the show. And Donnie's usually featured in that, I can guarantee. Lots of bacon and everything else. I love you all. Thanks, Donny, for being on tonight. I'm going to take us all out, and we will schedule
Donny,
a new one.
Cisco, thank you. I'll see everybody later on 13 past midnight. That's coming up in about 45 minutes.
Yes.
I'm going early all week this week.
I'll see you, Steve, over in the other show. I'll be here.
See you in the chat, guys.
Good night, chat. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Bye. Bacon to everybody, and I'm so glad we made it through Christmas. New Year's is coming up. Here we go. We love you all. Give everybody good night.
All right.
Maybe if I could take us out of here. And here we go. Bye.